Okay. I am going to let me shift gears. I've been joined by a guest tonight, and we're going to talk about Governor Cuomo in New York, and we're going to talk about the well, I'm calling it the BDSing of BDS because that's essentially what Cuomo is doing there. Hey, Matt, how's it going tonight?
I'm good. How are you, Ben?
I'm doing great. Now, Matt, I don't want to I know you well enough to know your last name, and I have a pretty good idea of how to pronounce your last name, but I've gotten wise enough not to even try or pretend. Could you pronounce your last name for the audience?
Well, we use the Americanized version. It's just Sienkiewicz.
Sienkiewicz. Okay. Okay. I
Yeah,
was
but if you
close.
look at it spelled out, that is not intuitive. Not much is out of those letters.
And you notice whenever we speak, I always just say Matt. I don't say Professor Sienkiewicz. I just say Matt because I just, it's not as easy as Dixon. But I want you, first of all, I want you to introduce yourself because I don't want to say too much or too little. Tell everybody a little bit about your background, and then let's talk about Governor Cuomo.
Yeah, sure. So, as Ben carefully avoided saying, I'm Professor Matt Sienkiewicz. I am a professor of communication and international studies at Boston College. My area of study is media studies in general, global media studies more specifically, and Middle Eastern American interactions via media even more specifically. I've written a number of articles about Palestinian media, about American funding of Palestinian and Afghan media, and I'll put a plug out there too. I've got a book coming out this summer called The Other Air Force, which is about American funding of radio stations, television stations, and films throughout the Middle East, based mostly on my field research in the West Bank and in Kabul, Afghanistan.
Great, great. Okay, so I wasn't sure if you wanted to put the university out there that you work at, just because I know a lot of professors like to just say I'm a professor, but not necessarily at what school. But anyway, it's out there. It's
No,
great.
yeah,
Let's
absolutely. I'm
talk about
coming to you live from Chestnut Hill, my office in Boston College.
yeah, and you have a great camera there, by the way. Speaking of media, the camera quality is spot on. So we'll talk about that offline.
It's a private school. You should see the tuition bills.
No, I have an idea about the tuition bills. So
Yeah, that's a whole other show, which I'd be happy to talk about.
Yeah,
but,
no,
maybe
we probably
after tenure, maybe.
yeah, okay, there you go. We'll wait for that. All right. So I wanted to bring you on this conversation. First, let me just give a little background. So over the weekend, Governor Cuomo has issued an executive order essentially declaring that he's ordering state agencies to boycott anyone who boycotts Israel, to divest from anyone who's threatening to divest from Israel, and to sanction anyone who's threatening to sanction Israel. Essentially, he's BDSing the BDS movement. And the BDS movement, a lot could be said about their motivations, their strategy, their effectiveness, but essentially the overarching theme is trying to attack Israel where it hurts financially for human rights violations. What they see is human rights violations, and there's going to be people who agree with them, and there's going to be people who vehemently disagree with them. I want to talk about, and feel free to comment on any of that, but I want to talk about the use of force of the executive order, the executive branch of the state of New York, to essentially, in my opinion, silence political dissent. What do you think about that and the entire episode?
Right. Well, I mean, the first thing I would do is just add a little bit to your description. And you're absolutely right. The BDS movement is largely economic. A lot of it is economic, but it's also cultural. It's not just a boycott of Israeli businesses. It's also a boycott of Israeli institutions and Israeli artists and a number of other things, which expands it beyond the realm of the economic and into certain political, cultural aspects, which I think is relevant in the discussion. But that said, I think that your characterization of it and your ironic characterization of it is pretty spot on. We can talk about BDS as sort of a separate issue, and it's probably worth teasing out why he thinks that this doesn't sound as bad as it probably sounds to much of your audience.
Yeah.
But first, we can explain why it sounds so bad. I mean, there's a terrible irony to it. On the one hand, it's just this, extremely liberal, strong-arm action. But on the other hand, the irony of it is that on the one hand, the complaint about BDS by people who are willing to give reasons as opposed to simply cry anti-Semitism, which we can talk about the merits of that separately. But for those who want to give reasons, they will say that the problem with BDS, or one of the problems with BDS, is that it singles out Israel for human rights violations, for occupation, for acting against the ideals that we'd like to hold them to, but it only singles out Israel, whereas there are a number of other countries that would be equally or nearly equally or even more so able to be sort of painted with this brush. Right, so the people who attack BDS will say something like, "You're gonna boycott Israeli universities, but American universities are okay with all of their ties in with the military and ties in with the State Department and these sorts of things." Right, so they'll say that this is an unfair singling out of one institution. What is Cuomo doing when he singles out BDS? It's something very similar. I mean, certainly there are a number of institutions and movements that are doing things that he doesn't like. Right? Why is he singling this one out? It looks like it's just a restriction on free speech. It's got questionable legality, and I think it's ironic.
What do you think is the irony part? Why do you think it's ironic?
That this movement, which is faulted for picking out one example of Israel and saying that's what Cuomo's problem presumably is that BDS just picks out Israel and it doesn't look at other violators, right? It's this one institution. He in turn has done something similar, right?
Okay.
In that it's just this one. Certainly, BDS is not the only thing out there that violates the principles that Cuomo thinks that BDS is violating, or I would presume it is not.